folks, welcome back to South Africa. This is Chris once again. Hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. Got a special feature today. My guest, now the first part's easy, I can get that, but if I get his surname right, that's going to be a bonus. Koketso Resane. Did I get it right?
Yeah, almost there. Resane.
Oh, see, I knew it. Resane, okay. And what is that ethnically?
Ethnically, it's actually a little mixture of us. It's one word that nobody uses anymore, but you can actually trace it back to a few languages, including Chitsong, I believe, probably Shona as well. But yeah, like I mentioned, it's not a very common word anymore.
No, I've never seen it. This threw me off, but Calabo. I was embarrassed though when he started saying it's a Setswana word. I'm like, what? And I never heard that.
Yeah,
anyway.
Should have an I at the end if you go to other parts of the continent, really. So yeah, okay. The spelling you could assume there's a spelling error there. I wouldn't count it against you.
Okay, cool beans. Well, let's get people to know a little bit about who you are, Koketso. You're a conservative, so clearly you're a sellout. So you're gonna have to tell us about that. What's going on there? What do? You got something out? Business informatics, I think, is what you do. So I don't know about the rest of the audience, but I'm a little confused by this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, so it's a little bit more in the IT space, but business informatics really, it's got to do with how businesses use systems, and it could be any type of system to actually conduct their day-to-day activities. So right now I'm more focused in the PLM space. That's a system used primarily by engineers, but it's an enterprise level system. So every time someone says business informatics, think of something like an ERP, like your SAP, databases like your Oracle, and how all those come together to actually allow us to do business.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned SAP. Now I'm tracking with you. I know SAP. I know that very well. I've made a lot of money off that stock years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, I know it's the biggest German software company out there. You definitely one that's done quite well. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. Whereabouts you're from, and a little bit about your background, education, maybe.
Okay, I'll go all the way back to the beginning here. So I was born in Johannesburg, but spent the first part of my life in Mafikeng, which has now been renamed to Mahikeng. That's the capital of the Northwest Province, where the population is primarily the Botswana people, very close to the Botswana border as well. Yeah, that's where I really grew up. And then in about 1998, my father's basically a professional missionary, and we needed to move as a family to Johannesburg because of proximity to the airport. So he's traveled quite a bit throughout his career, especially throughout the African continent. And that was in 1998, and I've been in Johannesburg ever since. So I have a strong Eastern Johannesburg accent because of it. Right about the time when we moved is right about the time I learned English as well. Besides that, he married a nurse. So my father married a nurse. She married a missionary. And then my mother decided at some stage that maybe this nursing thing wasn't the best idea. So she got into the environmental science game and worked for one of the larger gold mines out in the country, and finally at the Minerals Council of South Africa. So she was an adoption manager, going in underground, actually making sure that mines are conforming to the national standards and the like, and just to make sure that no one's lying on the reports that they give the state.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like a very accomplished family. Do you have any siblings or just yourself?
So I'm a middle child. I don't know if middle child syndrome is actually a thing, but I'm a middle child. But two sisters, one above, one below. And I'm 4 years younger than my older sister, 2 years older than my younger sister. And yeah, we've done quite well, really, I believe, for ourselves. We represent our family really well, and we all basically still close. So, no one's gotten angry and decided to elope anyway, luckily for me. And I'd like to believe I'm a model brother.
Well, I imagine you probably are. So you're the co-host of the ManPatria program. Now, I've been curious about that for a long time. I never did ask Zuma how that happened, but I mean, where do you get ManPatria from, and how did you guys come up with this, and how did you and Zuma link up? Do you know each other from growing up or from school or something like that, or you just meet online? How's that all work?
Yeah. So I mentioned in 98, the family moved to Johannesburg. This would have been in December. So yeah, our school calendar actually starts in January and ends in December, as I'm sure you know. Yep. So yeah, we moved right after I finished second grade. So the following year I started third grade, new environment, new city, new school, of course. And I met Dumo that following year. He was already in the school. and we kind of became friends since the time we were around 9, 10 years old. So yeah, that's how me and Dumo met. For a brief moment, we were in the same high school. Then his family moved off to another part of Johannesburg. We didn't see each other for quite a while, but kept in touch. And then, yeah, I think it was 2018. We just had coffee one day, and he was telling me about how he wants to start off a Libertarian YouTube channel to basically discuss everything from philosophy to economics to politics to current affairs. Doom was actually quite schooled in economics as well, so he's not, someone talking out of his thumb here. He's actually schooled in some of that. And yeah, he mentioned the idea. I said, listen, do it. You've got my support. I'm a bit of a techie myself, and I can help you out wherever you need to. So in the beginning, I was more a behind the scenes kind of guy, and then lockdown kind of happened, and yeah, now I'm in front of the camera.
And do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. It's actually, even though I don't like talking, I do like talking. So yeah, I enjoy having meaningful conversations. And this is something that was actually picked up in my psych profile that I had to do for the current job that I'm doing now. So yeah, psych profile says I'm one of those people that, yeah, I don't talk much and I work best left alone. But at the same time, I take a lot of enjoyment out of discussing things I find meaningful. So I don't like reading novels either. I prefer to read, things of substance, history, that sort of thing.
No, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about some things of substance here. Let's go with, we're still waiting for the Constitutional Court to make a determination. One, I think they have no choice but to obey the Constitution and say that the election must go forward, but we're waiting for that to come about. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they're going to say anything, or they're going to try to intervene and supersede the Constitution? What are your thoughts?
I think there's probably behind the scenes pressure to, kind of postpone the elections as best as possible. There's quite a few theories out there. One of the more prominent ones is that the ANC is quote unquote trying to get their house in order. So they are in no position right now to actually contest an election themselves as a ruling party. I don't believe they have boots on the ground to actually go out and actually do some campaigning. They typically rely on door-to-door campaigns, which have kind of been hampered due to the COVID-19 situation and, of course, lockdowns, etc. So, yeah, I believe because they're not ready, they've been applying some behind-the-scenes pressure on the judiciary to probably postpone the election under the guise that there won't be free and fair because the ANC and, quote, other parties haven't been able to do the usual campaigns.
Well, my argument on that has been since June of last year when they eased the lockdown the first time a bit and people could leave their homes again without being arrested. My argument has been that this is the moment that all parties should be campaigning from now, and it doesn't stop until you get to the election. Excuse me. It doesn't stop to get to the election this year. But from my perspective, I'm not on the ground. I haven't been in South Africa in this time frame, but from my perspective, I haven't really seen much in the way of campaigning by any of these parties until very recently when the DA did a few things. But, I mean, it seems to me an entirely wasted year and a half, squandered time. The African National Congress has done everything possible to embarrass themselves and take themselves out of the running an election. You don't even have to campaign hard. All you have to do is, how's that cooked chicken? Did you buy any open-toed shoes this week? How about that e-commerce? Did you buy anything? No, yeah. I go, you couldn't. I brought to you proudly by the African National Congress. So have you seen it differently? Some people have told me they've seen some posters in some places by different parties, but are you seeing anything at all by any political parties out there campaigning?
Yeah, I mean, kudos to the Democratic Alliance. I think they've been, so maybe if I can rewind a bit here, but the Democratic Alliance do seem like a party where people actually pitch up in the office and actually do day-to-day work. And it does pay off because they have been actively campaigning. They've sent out a few text messages. I picked up a call, I think, earlier this week on Monday. The reason being is where I live, it's predominantly a Democratic Alliance stronghold, if I can put it that way. So they actually go out and call as many people as they can, tell you to make sure that you're registered to vote. Oops, muted myself there.
Sorry.
Yeah, they go around asking people to register to vote. And then, of course, they leave the phone call at the end by asking if they can count on your support. Those are the exact words they use. So they've been doing a lot of that anyway. And they're probably more prepared or readier than anyone. But that's the Democratic Alliance. I can't really speak about other parties because they're not as visible. And the most visible, of course, being our friends with the Red Berets, who, out of all their rallies and campaigns against whatever is the issue of the day, you don't hear much about them actually saying, guys, I remember in these coming elections, vote for EFF. So, yeah, it's only the DA I can say who's been actively campaigning. And I can't say much about the others, of course.
Yeah, no, when the DA started their official campaign, they had that video from Early B. I love that song. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting because Joburg, I was reasonably confident that the DA could win in Joburg and even potentially win outright majority, until Herman Mashaba tossed his hat in the ring and has his group, there's Action SA, is back in the mix. Now I'm a little bit concerned that he remains popular enough that he could probably take a third of the vote. The DA could take probably 25% of the vote if he takes a third, and there'd have to be some sort of coalition with him as a majority partner. Does that sound plausible, or am I smoking something?
I think it's very plausible. Now, where I live, we're not classified as Johannesburg at a district level. I'm probably about 5 kilometers away. But you do talk to people, and people did kind of have a sense that they trust Mashaba. So you could make an argument there that it's not the DA that won the previous local government election. It was actually Herman Mashaba and his presence and his clout and, him campaigning under their banner. So people definitely like the man. He's got credentials, of course, that he is a somewhat self-made businessman. I believe he's 62 years old now, so he's been around as well. So, just the trust in the man, I think, is enough for him to pull in quite a few votes. A third might just be a little bit ambitious, I believe, because there is some semblance of party loyalty at the end of the day. But he'll definitely take a large enough chunk that when the discussion about a coalition needs to be had, you definitely need to pull Action SA, his new party, into the room.
No, absolutely. Someone, Jackie Duploy just said she heard Herman Mashaba talk in Gareth Cliff's show, and it doesn't sound like he would work with the DA. I'm a little surprised to hear that. I didn't hear that on Gareth Cliff, so interesting. So my predictions were this before. Now I've had to modify these because Herman Mashaba entering the ring with Action SA changed the landscape for me in Joburg. And then, of course, the events in KwaZulu-Natal in July changed the landscape in Durban. I never in my wildest dream thought that the ANC would be in that much jeopardy in Durban, but I think they're in serious jeopardy in Durban right now. People are just angry. I know a lot of people in Durban, and they are fit to be tied with the ANC. It's quite a shocking thing. So I figured DA outright Cape Town, DA outright Nelson Mandela Bay, which they should have been outright last time, but they didn't even retain their 2011 share of the vote. Had they done that, they would have won 2016 outright. And then I predicted DA in Joburg. Now I think maybe a coalition. And in Pretoria or Tshwane, clearly the DA I think is going to win there. But the thing that really gets me is Durban now. That's on the cards. I saw that Julius Malema said, it's ours. eThekwini is ours. We've taken it. That's his prediction. So I don't know what he's drinking or what he's smoking, but I don't see the EFF having that kind of appeal in Durban. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I'm almost willing to bet my liver here that the EFF will never take Durban or eThekwini. That's the municipal name. Definitely not in this election. In my lifetime, it's still highly unlikely, of course. But Durban is definitely up for grabs. I think it will still go to the ANC at the end of the day because of some form of shenanigan. There's usually a last-minute shenanigan of sorts when these political parties are campaigning. Expect to hear stories of either someone having an affair or someone then being accused of having siphoned money out of their out of the state from the comfort of their senior government post or anything like that. So I think, that's likely to happen, which will probably swing it in way of the ANC. But the EFF themselves, they've got quite a long ways to go because the DA does still have substantial support in there. And the biggest elephant in the room here would be the IFP, which predominantly, running off the back of the Zulu nationalism, do have a say in the political affairs of the province. I mean, we saw what happened with the looting where the newly crowned Zulu king couldn't get a lot of people to actually calm down a bit. It's only when Mangosuthu Buthelezi came out and said, guys, stop the nonsense. that people actually stopped with immediate effect. So it does kind of show what kind of clout he carries, having been the former prime minister of the region back in the apartheid days. So yeah, you can't rule out the IFP, of course, but the DA has a much stronger claim than the EFF, as to the IFP. And of course, there's probably a few people who could swing it one way or another. I'm thinking now of your more minority-focused parties. On the national ballot, they don't really count for much, but in more concentrated areas like a Durban, I'm pretty sure the Indian population is more than happy to actually give off their vote to the minority front, etc.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that actually that's a good point there. Indian communities in KZN were especially concerned about what was happening with the chaos that took place in July, and that's then this whipping up of racial animosity by political actors across the board, blaming Indians for targeting black South Africans, yada, yada, yada. That's not a good thing. That's definitely going to have a negative impact for if there's any Indian support for the ANC. I think a lot of it's going to evaporate.
Yeah, no, I agree. The little that they actually had, I don't see it being sustained going forward. And not just with someone like the Minority Front, but even some of your other players like the United Democratic Movement, etc. So maybe a reminder to your viewers. I know with those in the States, they probably don't know this, but we're not sitting with a two-party kind of state here. Our ballot box is quite lengthy. Our ballot papers, that is. So yeah, we've got quite a few options when we actually go out and vote. Some are very targeted, especially at a community level, like in a place like Durban. So yeah, I really believe it's interesting to watch. But Malema's, I don't think he would bet on himself taking it either.
Well, what's interesting here is that even before the events in July, well, of course they happened in Gauteng as well, but even before the events in July, especially in KZN, it seemed pretty clear to me that this was an opportunity. I don't know if the IFP is up for it, but this is an opportunity for it to become a viable party once again. As you look historically at the Inkatha Freedom Party, it has declined election after election after election. It's a shadow of what it once was back in 1994. And part of that, of course, is because Zuma arose to the top of the ANC. He's a Zulu, and a lot of people defected to the ANC standard to go along with him. But now that before this July nonsense happened, but now that that Zuma is not in charge of the party anymore, this seemed to me like a great opportunity. And I was thinking last year that the Inkatha Freedom Party, if they're serious about their craft and were out there and doing retail campaigning, they could actually regrow their base somewhat. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it would be interesting to see, and possibly in Durban, because last time in Durban, the ANC took 58% of the vote. I thought it was higher, but I looked it up. It was only 58%. And that's before all the idiocy that's happened over the past 18 months with the the lockdown and then the government that doesn't know. Our intelligence didn't tell us anything. Well, yes, they did. No, they didn't. Yes, they did. Didn't. And then anyway. So I think this is an opportunity for the IFP to grow, but I'm not convinced they're going to do it. And it would be a real shame to see that not happen, because the IFP is not an unreasonable party to have out there as part of the mix.
Yeah, I think it's more a numbers game where the finances of the IFP probably don't allow them to campaign with the same kind of muscle they've had in the past, and that's starting to show now. But again, like I mentioned, all it really takes is one instance, and before you know it, the Zulu nationalism aspect of it, the Zulu pride, can kick in any day now. And if it always does kick in, and last time the Zuma option was always there. Without the Zuma option, I do expect them to somewhat pick up a little bit, but not because of losses of votes for the ANC necessarily. I think it's probably going to be at the cost of, I think the IFE will gain votes at the cost, or let me rather say at the cost of the ANC instead of at the cost of someone like the EFF, etc. So yeah, it's really more about them snatching back some of those that had in the past voted for someone else. I think it's likely to happen, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's quite a case study to be made there. And I think that's why Julius Malema is quite focusing on that area, because he knows there's quite a lot up for grabs there. He'll definitely pick up in numbers. But like I mentioned before, we can't take him seriously in that part of the country until at the very least he can jump over the hoop of the DA. And then once he's done that, he still has to jump over the hoop of the IFP as well.
Now, Ozzy Oba's had a few comments here. He said the DA mayor announcements... At the DA mayor announcement, Steenhuisen said the DA is aiming to win Mui Umgeni region while trying to get as many wards as possible in Durban. Okay, that's a strategy. And it says more likely for the DA to grow to become official opposition in Durban and IFP to take over. I'd have no trouble with the IFP taking over in Durban. I'd be excited about that, but I don't know. That's a big jump for them. A big jump. Maybe a coalition between the two of them. But anyway, that's what the Azioba said that. And he said the Indian vote will make a difference for the DA in Durban. Huge support in Durban for the DA. The first sentence, yeah, I agree. I think the Indian vote is going to make a big deal for the DA. I don't know if huge support's the right term, though. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not seeing it as well. But I was just amazed every time I went to Durban just how much of an ANC stronghold it has long been. I didn't realize that until the first time I was there 20 years ago and just how popular the ANC was at the time. But they're not popular now. They're not popular now.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, the ANC kind of positioned themselves as the reason why a civil war didn't break out between, I would say, the Zulu majority in the region and the very idea of a democratic South Africa. I mean, if you go back to 1994, this is now after Mandela had won the election. This is where Zuma first came to prominence, and that he was deployed by Mandela to specifically go and deal with the situation in KZN. I hear stories from my father even that back then there were letterheads coming out of the KwaZulu-Natal provincial department where they had declared themselves as the kingdom of KwaZulu-Natal. And this was all speaking to a nationalism, potentially future secession and all of that. And that was Zuma's role when Mandela was president, really appeasing Zulu people as someone they trust, someone who's one of them, someone who's from there as well. So, yeah, it's definitely worth bringing up. And, yeah, I'd have to agree there that it's not just the Zulu majority that's there, but the Indian population is quite sizable enough. I believe the DA will have to do some work to retain some of them. But, yeah, I'm gonna bank on the minority front and others actually potentially even doubling their numbers. They're not very big numbers, of course, but I can see them doubling their numbers in the wake of what has happened with the recent riots.
No doubt about that. Well, let's shift a little bit here and talk a little bit about yourself. How did you become a conservative or a libertarian? And how does that come about? Is that because of your educational experience or your experience in the business world, or just I know why I'm a conservative. It's because the other side, It doesn't work on the other side.
Yeah, so funny story, maybe not a funny story, but you have to go back to high school here. So I chose history as a high school subject. How our system is set up here, I can't remember exactly, but you choose the subjects you progress with or the subjects you finish high school with. And history was always one of those black sheep subjects that people took because they assumed it would be a free pass. It would be an easy way to, just get your high school done. But I chose it. I chose it intentionally because I really am interested in history. And the more I read on history, the more you come across things, the more I realized that, hang on a minute, much of the world's problems today are that we just keep repeating history. And the reason we keep repeating history is because we're always trying to, I would say, be a little bit too liberal, if I can put it like that, And so that was my initial position back then. Going into my adult life now, I just witnessed how, things like political correctness became a thing. And that's when I became conservative. A lot of it also has to do with Aaron Magruder's TV show. I believe it was Aaron Magruder, The Boondocks, where, it was all very comedic and everything. But Aaron Magruder, who's, he started off as a comic artist who used to, draw comics in, I can't remember in which publication, but he had a TV show created out of his comics, and he would actually use satire to actually play on some of the stereotypes, particularly of the American black population in here. And that really did wake me up to see that actually a lot of the stuff is actually happening, and we're seeing it right in front of our eyes. So I'd say that's how I really became a conservative, and really over the years, I've just picked up more and more reasons to actually do this. A lot of people talk about how Obama was potentially such a great president, but not a lot of people are willing to admit to all of his failures, of course. What is it about Barack Obama that pushed people to vote for a Donald Trump at first opportunity once Obama's second term came to an end, of course? Why didn't they vote for Hillary Clinton? So it's things like that when I really think about it, you start realizing that at the end of the day, in the American sense, it's the grand old party really that still maintains some of the core values which the founding fathers had. And those are kind of values that speak to me as well. It's funny that conservatives are the only ones in the world who would always advocate for people to practice whatever religion they want to without persecution. It's always the liberals that then want to force you into a specific ideology without creating room for anything else. And that to me speaks a lot. And I'm not just saying this as a Christian man, but I'm saying this as someone, with friends all over the world, friends of different backgrounds, different ethnicities and the like. I have no issue with people practicing their faith. I have an issue with you having an issue of me practicing my faith. And that's typically what pushed me to be a conservative, I think.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. It is interesting and ironic that the very people who claim to be cuddly, huggy, and caring, and everyone should be allowed to be what they want to be, are the very people who try to stamp out anything that's in discord with what they say. And that, of course, is the liberal left. It's absolutely astounding. Here in America, it's perfectly fine to attack Christians and abuse Christians and demonize Christians. But God forbid you say something about a Muslim, then you're a hateful person. Now, in my view, you shouldn't say anything bad about a Muslim or a Christian, but my point is that Christians, it's open season. And I first noticed that back in the 1980s when we had, I don't know if you're familiar with this, a bit of history, so maybe you've heard of it, the moral majority. Jerry Falwell and the moral majority was a huge movement back in the 1980s here in the States. And it was very commonplace for the media to be dismissive and condescending towards Christians and the moral majority, depicting them as, of course, we had some of these televangelists that were really doing some stupid things like Jim and Tammy Faye Baker and other stuff like that, which really wasn't helpful. But anyway, they relished that moment they could take advantage. Aha, look, these guys, and make a caricature of Jim Baker. They just loved it. And so they attack Christians all the time. But then, it's interesting. I should share this too real quick, Koketso. So it's interesting here because I've have to listen to the pundits and the academics and the media in this country talk about how this is inherently a racist country and how Americans have white fragility and white people are terrified that they're losing their this, that, and the other. Did they miss the part that in 1964, Ted Kennedy had our immigration laws changed? And that's what's made it possible for all these people of color to come to this country for the past 50 years. By the way, everyone that voted on that in Congress was white. They were all white. So it was white people that changed the laws so that other people could come here and share in our experience. And that just seems, I don't understand how people just don't put two and two together. It's pretty obvious that if Congress, just like the Civil Rights Act, it was passed because of white folks in Congress. There weren't any black folks in Congress doing it. So it beggars imagination how these people can call us racist and say our nation's racist when it's done more to uplift people on this planet than anyone in history. I still shake my head at that one.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned this. I just finished last week a book by, I'm trying to remember his name now. I'm terrible with author names. Jared Stepman, I believe he's called. He wrote a book titled The War on Culture. And he really goes all the way back to the founding, right up until almost our modern day, really. And he speaks about a lot of that, really, about, how it's actually American values which, abolished slavery. And it was Western civilization that abolished slavery, while slavery still remains in place in few, but they exist some parts of the world where it's actually the norm and there's nothing wrong with it. But the same Western civilization that is actually being accused of still perpetuating slavery through different means is the same Western civilization that was the first and only one in history to come out and say this is wrong. So there's a lot of these stories, and it was quite a fascinating book. I think I'm going to go back and read it again because he mentions absolutely everything from how Abe Lincoln isn't even safe from the left anymore, along with Jackson Lee and the likes.
No, that's absolutely insane that they attack Lincoln. I mean, the reason the Republican Party exists is for the end of slavery. Abolition was the reason the Republican Party was founded. That's why it came into existence. They were abolitionists and they wanted to end the institution of slavery. And that's why the country fractured.
And it was white men.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was white men
who
called for the end of slavery.
Just white men. That's right. Because there were no women allowed to vote. It was just white men. I was talking yesterday with General Bolduc. I said, when people start talking this ludicrous idea about reparations, I said, I put my hand up. I want my reparations. And people look at me like, what do you mean? Well, I had 8 great-grandfathers. 7 of them fought in Union regiments to end slavery. So I want to be recompensated for ending slavery because we actually fought on the battlefield. 7 great-grandfathers. Obviously, I'm being facetious, but the point is that they always try to twist this around, but it's disheartening to see some of the stuff. So I was also mentioning on my program yesterday, and I mentioned it on my radio program last night. General Michael Hayden, who used to be the director of the National Security Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency, very controversial time during the Iraq campaign. He was head of the CIA with the torture and all that stuff. Anyway, General Hayden, I worked with him very closely at the National Security Agency when I was there as a major. He was then a lieutenant general. And he seems a very different person than he is today because I've been watching. Twitter's wonderful. I hate it. It's a cancer, but it's wonderful for exposing people for who they truly are. You should see some of this. So someone put a list up there of 8 states that had the highest number of hospitalizations for the Rona, and 7 of them are located in the Deep South. And so General Flynn, not General Flynn, General Hayden, not Flynn, General Hayden, a 4-star general, retired, and an academic, an intelligence professional, responds and says, oh, interesting, the Confederate States of America. What? Why would you say Confederate States of America? The war ended in 1865. This is, how many centuries must that be something that continues on? It's just astounding to me. But that's just a typical left nonsense. They throw something out there. People uninformed don't know what's going on. I mean, the fact that there may be more people in the hospital because of corona has nothing to do with the Confederate States of America. It's just a way to denigrate those states. But that's what the left does. Everything they do is about denigrating people and undermining their reputation and character.
Yeah, it's almost a very concentrated effort. I mean, we have a lot here, which I think I've mentioned to you even in the past, that, looking at myself of where I am right now, I can't claim any semblance of apartheid victimhood, if I can put it that way. I went to school with guys who are the same age as me. We all came out of the same high school. We all got into tertiary education at the same time. We all started working similarly at the same time. And lo and behold, I'm just like one of them when I'm actually going out there in the workplace, So I can't claim to be a victim of anything because I've, like many other people, managed to actually do something or make something out of myself. The left, on the other hand, insists that me as a black man, I'm somehow incapacitated when it comes to, particularly when it comes to work, when it comes to my pay slip, right down to the way I speak, me not speaking English like a Julius Malema does when he's on a TV platform must be some form of indicator of privilege, I assume, which isn't necessarily true, But yeah, I just feel like, it's something that the left particularly focuses on, and they do this as a very effective smokescreen to hide their own failures. Which of the left's policies have actually done any good over a period of time? You'll struggle to actually find one, And again, going back to the conservatives, my conservatism, I have no issues with things like let me say same-sex marriages and the like. If that's something you want to get into, then I'm not going to stand in your way and get into it. But at the same time, if you then force me to now adopt whatever it is you come up with at whim, that's when I start having a problem with it. And we can't codify certain things into law to please people who have never had this quote-unquote privilege for the entirety of human history, if I can put it like that. And there's even a running joke there that it's funny how on your death certificate, it's still going to say male or female, even though you can tick whatever box about your gender you can in your lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, hey, folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa here on Thursday, the 26th of August, 2021. My special feature guest is Koketso Resane. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So there was something that struck me, your description of yourself, and you kind of talked around that just a moment ago. You said a part of a unique blend of South African millennials who are neither victims of apartheid-era oppression nor proponents of post-apartheid racial bigotry. I absolutely love that sentence. That's fantastic. That's it's interesting because we're both sitting here, we're both conservatives, and it's conservatives that look at the world that way, right? We look at the world as let people be who they are and respect others. But it's the left, man. They can't have that. It's too big a danger to them. They have to be able to divide and parse and put people in little boxes here and little boxes there, keep them at each other's throats, and that's how they rule. Which is very effective. It works in many places.
Yeah, it does. But I'm just really wondering, is this the kind of values you want to teach your children? Now, I'm not a parent yet, but I don't imagine having children and me telling them that, listen, because you're automatically black, or let me say a person of color, quote, strong genes, But I don't imagine raising my children with the premise that they are disadvantaged at life simply because of the way that they look, and the left does this all the time to the effect that you can't trust the state anymore with giving a solid education to your child. It's very scary what's actually happening in schools. And previously, this used to be the domain of your universities and the likes, but we've seen now how this trickles down into early childhood development and early schooling, of course. It's quite concerning. I mean, when I was in university, I went to the University of Johannesburg for my undergraduate. And the reputation in that institution is, people who go there to just, you pick up your degree or your diploma, whatever it is you do, and you get the hell out of there and you start working. That's the reputation. So the institution or the students in that institution, they're typically laid to whatever riot is the theme of the day, whether it's a fees must fall, or whether it's something like, the toppling down of historical statues and the like. The University of Johannesburg is usually late to that party because the mindset in the institution is that, listen, I'm here to pick up a piece of paper that says I'm qualified so I can go out there in the real world and actually start making some money. Not so if you go to some other parts of the country where they're really perpetuating this thing of you must turn down a statue that, hundreds of thousands of people before you used to walk past without issue. Suddenly it's become a problem. We saw what happened with the southern states about, the conversation about the Confederate flag and how that quickly trickled into South Africa about the previous apartheid regime flag, and there were calls to effectively make that an illegal site in public spaces and the like. And my argument was that, listen, I talk to a lot of guys who are young, guys who are 10, 11, 12, 13. And if I show them this flag, they have no idea what it is. And people are making this big effort to outlaw it by law, that it must never be seen again. Meanwhile, the generations coming after us and those in the future, they have no idea what this thing is. It's already going to be relegated to a museum anyway. No one can even recite the old national anthem anymore, the pre-94 national anthem. So there's really no reason to make big issues out of these things. But the left always does that because, again, they're failing left, right, and center in the modern world. So they always bring up the past and stir up a racial tension, etc., just so they can remain relevant and have someone to blame.
No, I think you've hit it spot on. To remain relevant. It is bizarre. I mean, as a historian, I find it ironic that people have such weak ideas that they feel the need to ban things. When I went to Germany the first time in the early 1980s as a soldier, I had a copy of Mein Kampf. Well, that was a crime in Germany. Now, not for me because we had a status of force agreement, but Germans couldn't buy Mein Kampf. And you couldn't display the old Nazi flag and stuff like that. When you ban things, it's not a strong sense that you really are in control of your culture. If you're afraid of what people have to say, what people have to share and its symbology. If it's not important, it won't survive. And if it's like, here in the States, I never heard of the Proud Boys. Never even heard of them before until they're all over the news. They kept going on and on. I'm like, who are the Proud Boys? It's like the, Elemento Pianon, that guy. I never even heard of that before. And apparently he was some sort of phenomenon for a year and a half. I guess I was living under a rock. But the reason they get attention is because the press keeps talking about it. And they keep talking about white supremacy in this country. And I'm still looking around, where's this white supremacy at? I've only ever seen the Ku Klux Klan once in my entire life, and I'm 57 years old. That was in Columbus, Ohio in 1976 when we had, 1978, we had federally court-ordered busing, and the Klan came out with a sad group of about 25 overweight guys wearing their robes in Columbus, Ohio to protest against busing. That's the only time I've ever seen the Klan in my entire life. Now, that doesn't mean they're not out there, but I see Antifa every day torturing and looting and burning our cities and BLM destroying everything. Seems to me they have a lot more strength, a lot more money, and a lot more resources than white supremacists do. Chicago, Lori Lightfoot says the greatest danger to public safety in Chicago is white supremacy. This is the city where 500 people get shot in July. It's unbelievable.
Lightfoot is the mayor. Hey,
she is. And by the way, none of those shootings were done by white supremacists, I should mention.
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned this because my current read right now is Hate Crime Hoax, I believe it's called, by Wilfred Riley. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating book. Yeah, in fact, if you've never heard of this book, I suggest you go out and find it, soft or physical copy. Wilfred Riley, I believe, is a black man, one of those who came across Thomas Sowell and decided, hang on a minute, there's more to this. But yeah, he's written a whole book dedicated almost to hoaxes of attacks on racial minorities in the states, white supremacy, and that sort of thing. And yeah, he's got, I think, north of 300 different accounts where he goes into brief detail about each one. It's really fascinating stuff. And really, I'm sitting here on the other side of the world now, realizing that, there's definitely a bigger play here. The victimhood the victimhood narrative is starting to run out of steam. So you have people who are actively creating or manufacturing incidents just so they can keep having these conversations. And of course, corporates aren't safe from this either because they donate to a Black Lives Matter and similar type of organizations. And just on that topic, where's Black Lives Matter now? You haven't heard much about them since it came out that their founders have been splurging on lofty property. They've since disappeared from the face of the earth, or they're doing a Joe Biden and hiding in a bunker, I guess. But it really just does show that whatever the intent, whatever the outcome was, whatever their goals were, now that they feel that they've reached them at a financial level, they disappear from the face of the earth and really live a lavish lifestyle based off of corporate donations, really.
But what's really bad about it is the harm that's done. It's really dangerous, the societal harm that's done by these idiots, these grifters. They're really is what they are, is they're grifters, and they're just hoodwinking people for their own personal profit and ego and egomania.
Yeah, someone has to stop them, though, right?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge though because they've got support from the tech titans. And they've got support from media, and they've got support from academia, and it's tough. It amazes me how easily people can be hoodwinked into believing anything. I mean, when I say it amazes me, it doesn't fully amaze me because I've been in combat. I know how easy it is to inflame people to do things they shouldn't be doing. But the one thing that's definitely true about the world is that Homo sapiens don't change in some respects. We can easily be led by the nose anywhere as a species. It's not hard to do and get people inflamed and do things. It's really disheartening. But, I mean, it really does a lot of damage. I mean, look at South Africa with this idiocy with the white monopoly capital and all this other nonsense that goes on there, constantly blaming everything on the past. And while the past definitely plays a role, definitely has an impact, for instance, you mentioned education, and obviously you got a good education. Thank goodness for that, and then you've made great use of it. But my argument is the reason that, well, there's a lot of reasons why, not the least of which is their failed macroeconomic policies. But one of the main reasons why South Africans, so many black South Africans remain in such dire circumstances, because instead of fixing education, the ANC has actually made it worse. I mean, you've got schools in the Eastern Cape where kids are dying in pit latrines. That's beyond embarrassing. That's beyond embarrassing. And in the textbooks that never show up for fraudulent, broad-based black economic empowerment contracts where they just walk away with the money and then no one goes to jail over it. I mean, honestly, education is worse today in much of South Africa than it ever was during apartheid. And that's impressive to pull that off.
Yeah. At some point, I think everyone's just going to ask themselves, how did we get here? And we need to have, as a nation, some really hard conversations with ourselves about how we allowed ourselves to keep a party in power who've actually done nothing to improve the situation, especially after Mbeki was, after President Mbeki was effectively recalled by the party from the head of state position. What's also really baffling as well is that, it's parents who actually go out and vote. You as a parent, you can kind of see how your child is maybe not developing to the effect that they should be. And plenty of studies exist, of course, by think tanks locally and I'm sure internationally as well, but not everyone comes across them or reads them. They remain largely underreported as well. But as a parent, I can imagine that, you should be thinking hard about, why you'd actually want to keep this government in power if your child is actually having a negative impact. We've got reports coming out that, fourth grade learners can't actually read with comprehension. And then to make things worse, it doesn't stop there. When you read further, you then find out that their actual teachers can't pass some of the exams that the learners are given. So how do you, as an adult in your 20s, 30s, 40s, fail an exam that's supposed to be given to a child, and yet you're their teacher? So what's this actually done is it's created a parallel industry of private education, which is booming. And I know it's booming because I've had my hand in there in the stock market in anticipation of this. So I can see positive returns already. But it's created a parallel industry where private education partners and their holding companies, etc., are really starting to profiteer off this, off the basis of simply providing a decent education or providing the service of a decent education. Now, what this is going to do is give it about 10 years or so, and you're going to end up with two types of people in society. The one who's gotten a good education because their parents were, able to sacrifice and do what's necessary to put their child in a private school. Mm-hmm. And the complete opposite, where someone is going to graduate from public high school, and no one's going to want to look at them twice in terms of potentially even offering them a job and the likes. And that's going to actually create a very serious societal problem, I believe. And unfortunately, there's very little we can do about it for as long as this party remains in power. Education is still the biggest line item on the national budget every year. But depending on who you ask, we have some of the worst education outcomes in the world, outpaced by even other African countries, which on paper are far less developed than we are. You can safely assume that you have kids learning under a tree somewhere who are still receiving a better education than South African school children in some parts of the country who are in a classroom that is fully outfitted with, desks, a chalkboard, and an educator, of course. So we really have to ask ourselves some serious questions as a nation of why we keep on doing this. But definitely when I'm a parent, there's no way in heaven, earth, or hell I'm going to put my children in a public school. I came from a public school at a time when, things weren't that bad and I was still able to make something of myself. But I really feel for the generation of school kids now who have effectively been condemned and damned to a life of difficulty just simply because their parents weren't in a financial position to make the necessary sacrifices. And this includes even some of my own family members and extended family.
No, I certainly appreciate that. I'm also a product of public education, went to public schools and then went to state universities as well. So I appreciate that. But again, I was in a beneficial period too. I went to school at a time when going to a public school, I was actually challenged by my teachers in high school. They encouraged me, they challenged me, and egged me on to do better. And in fact, when I was finishing high school, there was 26% unemployment in my county back in the early 1980s, and I didn't own a farm. Although I worked on one, I didn't own a farm. I didn't own any land, so there really wasn't any prospects for me. So I'm just going to enlist in the Army. I don't know what else to do. I need to do something. And my high school teacher's like, "Why don't you go to college?" I'm like, "With what? I don't have any money." Like, no, you can get grants. You get grants and loans. And so I went to the guidance counselor's office, started looking, applied for financial aid. I got my paperwork in the mail, and it said zero. There's a little dollar amount that says zero. I'm like, how poor do you have to be to get money? I got nothing. And then I read it a little closer. Zero is the amount of money your family has to contribute to your education. In other words, you're fully qualified. So I got I get the full amount you get. But the point is that that was a different time. I would now be terrified if I had kids going to public school because teaching them critical race theory to identify, look at that child is black, that one's Asian, that one's white. They're different. See, they're different. Who does that? I mean, who teaches children? Who poisons children in any way like that? That's the behavior of a racist. I mean, children are children. You don't take children, put them in a room together and go, and the little black ones go over here, little white ones go over here, little Asian ones go over here. Kids play with each other. They get along. They don't have any of that stupidity in their mind. But they're actually teaching this in schools here now. And in Colorado, we had a black parent, a father, who said pretty much the same sort of along the logic you're talking about, how you're not oppressed, I'm my own person. He was in Colorado Springs, and I was just in Colorado Springs. That's why it got my attention. But he spoke because the school board was going to introduce critical race theory. There's 5 members on the board. His impassioned plea carried the day, and they voted down having critical race theory. But they voted down 3-2. Who are the 2 morons who voted to have critical race theory introduced so you teach children to identify people based on their physical differences? It's very disheartening. And I could see why private education is definitely where a lot of people are going to go and put their effort. Certainly in South Africa, I could see it. And I can see it here too, because people have had enough. It's really crazy. I feel like I'm in the Soviet Union at times, It's dystopian. It's bizarre.
Yeah, look, I don't know how bad the situation is over there, but yeah, I can tell you from just what I'm seeing with my own eyes here that, private schools are just popping up everywhere now. But there's a different problem to why this is happening as well, in that now I don't know who's in town planning at a government level, but even when new built up areas do spring up, there's hardly ever allocation now on the map. I'm talking about actual now zoning and town planning, etc. That there's hardly ever zoning for a school, a fire station, a police station, a hospital. They just want to put up as many residential property as they can, because of course there's taxes coming in from all of those. And what then happens is you get one of the private players coming in and saying, okay, cool, we'll buy a piece of land here and actually put up a private hospital. We'll put up a private school. And we'll put up some private security as well. And what this does is obviously it adds strain to the public policing that's already severely strained. But this also then creates a booming industry of private security, private schooling, private education. And speaks into what I was mentioning earlier about how you're going to end up with two classes of people: those who've had it, basically the haves and the have-nots. So again, it's really part of the government failure in doing all of this. And we're literally just watching all of this unfold. How do you sit back, watch a population growing with urbanization on the increase and everything, and you don't actually plan for that? You don't build any new fire stations, you don't build any new police stations to actually help absorb the influx of new residents that are coming in. It's terrible.
No, it's very poor urban planning. One of the things I did in my first master's program was community and regional planning. So I'm actually well versed in this sort of thing. And you just hit it spot on. You don't just slap up a bunch of houses and you have a community, because if you do that, you do that. Next thing you know, you're miles from services, and there's a fire, everything burns down. There's no fire department there. The police can't respond. You can't get in and out. You overburden existing infrastructure. So all of that has to be planned. It all has to be part of what's going on here. Well, Lori has just become a member. Let me do a quick salute for Lori there real quick. In case you don't know, Koketso, every time someone becomes a paying member of the channel, I give them a salute. And I think Lori's already a member. I think it might be a renewal, but somehow my zombie's acting up there. But every time someone becomes a paying member, I give them a salute as a sign of respect, of course, because that's what a salute is, a sign of respect. But let me ask you this question, and it was change tack a little bit here. What's the focus for you guys on ManPatria? What do you have a specific theme that you focus on, or you cover all events? I know that some of my viewers here know who you are, and some are here very specifically because they're excited that you're on the channel, and that's been mentioned multiple times here in the chat. But a few people here don't know much about your program, and I'd like to introduce ManPatria, because I think it's fantastic, to more people. So can you tell us a bit more about what you guys focus on?
So, yeah, I think maybe the biggest one would be rational thought, or let me rather say rational opinion. Obviously, with our own personal takes on it, but yeah, we don't really get a lot of rational opinion and rational voices on any platform in this country. You can't trust the news, for example. You can't trust the newspaper, and the usual big hitters in terms of the media spaces and the likes. You can't trust them either, and I do listen to particularly a lot of radio. So ManPatria really exists to introduce rational thought as a means of saying, right, this is where we are right now, but this is actually, this is actually why things are the way they are. This is why things happen, and this is something for you to think about. For a lot of people, they hear a lot of things for the first time, specifically around philosophy and the economic perspective of why things are the way they are. Now, in this part of the world, we unfortunately live in a part of the world where even anti-capitalist rhetoric is gaining traction. It's becoming bigger and bigger, of course, helped by the likes of Judas Malema and the likes. But also never forget that the ANC doesn't rule alone. They are in what is called the tripartite alliance, as I'm sure you are well aware of. And that includes the ANC, the South African Communist Party, and COSATU, the biggest federation of trade unions, all very, so you've got one self-proclaimed communist and two heavily socialist organizations in government. Our Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Bladen Zimande, he's the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. And I still believe that's the only cabinet position in the presidential executive where, if you're general secretary of the Communist Party, you are guaranteed a spot on the cabinet. Because again, the ANC always has to appease their partner in all of this. So anti-capitalist rhetoric is quite strong and is on the rise. Anti-free market principles are quite strong and on the rise. Anti-conservative principles are on the rise again. I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if you ever heard, if you heard of this, but in the South African army, a petition was made by, I believe by one person who wanted basically the dress code of the basic infantry to accommodate his Islamic beliefs. This made it all the way upstairs as well, and obviously by the time this broke out and I'm listening to radio conversations about this, I'm just here thinking that, hang on a minute, the part of the problem with neoliberalism, I guess, is that it tries to please everyone, and you can't please everyone. And but it wasn't presented that way. It was presented as no, the reason the basic infantry uniform is the way it is because of the system that was adopted, which came from before, which was inherently an oppressive system, of course, and wasn't really permissive of other religions, etc., etc. So a lot of that is actually happening, to the effect that I don't know how it is in the States, but even here you have people questioning why Easter should be a public holiday and Christmas and the likes. Because the law tries to please everyone, or at least the Constitution tries to please everyone, and you have a party that's perpetuating this type of thing. So Man Patriot really does seek to exist, to be a voice of rationality at the very least, where we're not saying that take our opinion at face value, but this is just our opinions, introducing a little bit of rationality. And of course, I suppose it does help that it's three black guys sharing on all of this, of course. But something needs to be said about this. And we can't sit back 10, 15 years from now and then wonder what we could have done. This is us maybe trying to do something about it right now. And maybe it won't have any form of rewards in the future, and that will be perfectly fine. But, history will judge us differently, I guess.
No, that's a fair point. It's interesting what you had to say there about all that. Let me ask you this question about growing up. Obviously, you say millennial, but I don't know if you're really a millennial. You were, it's kind of before the millennials, I think. But you're not technically born free either, are you? Because you're born just before apartheid ended, or are you born?
Yeah.
So, but we'll still call you born free. That's fair enough because you came to age of maturation, born free. So from your perspective? I mean, what's it like? I mean, I've been all over Southern Africa and during the dark times, of course, too. And I've seen the behavior of people of all ethnicities, all races, although there's only one race. I'm sick of this nonsense. But anyway, no, I mean, we're all Homo sapiens. If we were different races, we wouldn't be able to mate, It wouldn't happen. So people.
Fair enough.
I mean, seriously, it's the dumbest thing ever. It's a made up construct which is used to divide people. And it's unfortunate that it's done that way. But have you had bad experiences at all? I mean, with I don't know, with white South Africans or anyone else, just because of who you are or your appearance? I mean, I'm sure that happens in everybody's life. I've had bad experiences because I'm a light pigmentation and people assume things or say things or do things or try to take advantage of me, that sort of thing. But I mean, we all experience that. Obviously, it's not something that if it's ever happened to you, that seems to have greatly affected you at all.
Yeah, so I haven't had anything to greatly affect me. There are pockets or little incidents here and there. So, for example, I don't speak Afrikaans. So if I'm on the road traveling to, the complete other end of the country, I typically stop in a small town and, you walk in a shop trying to buy something. But because I don't speak Afrikaans, there's a communication disparity between me and whoever's behind the counter, for example. You can see the irritation on their face because everyone in the area speaks Afrikaans. Black, white, doesn't matter. But me, as someone from far away, I don't. So there's a little bit of frustration, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a racist place.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places to go to is actually Stellenbosch, a very beautiful place. I don't know if you've been there.
Oh, many times. I love Stellenbosch.
Yeah, so you will agree with me then that Stellenbosch was crafted by God himself. That's how beautiful it is.
Well, that's what people say. But, I mean, if you're in Stellenbosch and you don't speak Afrikaans, I mean, I suppose some people maybe, but I mean, look at me. They expect me to speak when I'm in Stellenbosch. Expect me to speak Afrikaans and ek maar ek praat nie Afrikaans nie.
But yeah, so it has the reputation of if you're a non-Afrikaans speaker, you will be ostracized in some way or another. Whereas I haven't had any significant negative experience in my time there, and I've been there quite a few times actually. So yeah, I wouldn't say I've had anything life-changing. In fact, for me personally, a lot of the time it's quite the opposite. You speak to someone on the phone and they forget your name, obviously, because when you introduce yourself on the phone, the name quickly disappears. But after 5-10 minutes in conversation, people assume that I'm actually not black because, again, I speak with a very suburban accent, if I can put it like that. So it's quite the opposite for me. And you could maybe perhaps allude to some form of bigotry, in that the expectation, particularly from white South Africans, is that guys like me either don't exist or few or far between. But again, it's nothing negative that really changes my life or affects my thought pattern. And this is probably the reason why I have friends from all walks of life, different races, etc. I've never had to change my life outlook based on the color of my skin, or neglect a friend or relationship or a significant other because of how they look. So on my part, it's a big no, primarily because of where I live. And also primarily because, everything I experience tends to be in the opposite direction, really.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We had a couple super chats here from Patrick Vukafenik. They're actually super stickers. Thank you for the Patrick. I didn't miss them, but the second one just came up, so thank you for that. Well, so why Stellenbosch? How did you go there for work or go there on holiday, and that's how you became acquainted with Stellenbosch? I mean, that's a long way from Joburg. It's not around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there for work and on a couple of personal trips, but I'd have to go back a few years now to just, I've even lost count how many times I've been there. But yeah, I mean, I went there once and I just loved the old Dutch style in the buildings there. I loved the fact that it's somewhat a small town with a mountainous backdrop. Every time I'm there, it's always green. The weather also agrees with me there. But yeah, even on business trips, I really do enjoy my time there. There's just something about being in there and then literally being on a grape on a grape farm, in a vineyard. There's just something about that whole presence. And of course, I'm saying this as a Joburger who doesn't have this in his backyard like people from the Cape do.
No, it's I got you. But it's interesting you should mention that, because a colleague of mine worked in Pretoria in Hatfield at our embassy there, and we had a conference down in Cape Town a number of years ago, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go do wine tour?" I'm like, I don't know. It's not really my sort of thing. Wine tours. He's like, no. I got a driver. I got a friend. He hire him. He's fantastic. Just be the two of us. Come on. And I did it just to make my colleague happy. Oh my God, that was such fun all over. We went to Stellenbosch. It was such a great time. I've got pictures of myself sitting back there with the mountains behind me. And it was absolutely amazing. Something I never would have thought to do. But I mean, I don't know. Have you ever done those wine tours? Because it was really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah. No, I've done a few tastings, but I haven't done an actual full wine tour.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff.
I planned one for 2020, funny enough, and then lockdown happened. So I'm in debt, and I've got some catching up to do.
So, I mean, have you been in any other part of the area, Franschhoek or Paarl or something like that, or have you also been in those places?
Been to Franschhoek, just on the outskirts, though. Haven't been to Paarl either. Haven't been to Paarl at all. I've been to Ceres, I believe, once. We've gone out to Langebaan as a family many, many years ago. And I'm one of those people who I've been in every province. I've been in all the 9 provinces in the country. Some very briefly, but I can make that claim. And if you're ever out looking for a steak anywhere in the country, you go to East London and you go to a place called Cafe Neo in the East London Boulevard there. It's a simple looking restaurant upstairs, and order a steak there, and you'll pay me for this recommendation. That's how good it is.
Okay, well, I've never been to East London, so it's one of the places I haven't been, so I'll have to check that out. Yeah, there's only a few places in South Africa that province-wise I haven't been. I haven't been in the Northern Cape ever, and I haven't been to the Eastern Cape. But beyond that, I've been pretty much everywhere else. It's amazing. Koketso, you have one of the most amazing countries on the planet, and it's a real shame to see how it's been just destroyed by this ruling party. I mean, there's such potential in South Africa, the human capital, the variety of the landscape, the mineral resources, what was a fine education system, the most advanced financial sector on the continent. Just all of this stuff, this inheritance that was there for the ANC to take and fix the things that were wrong and go forward. And here we find ourselves today, in so many respects, 27 years later, things are worse for so many people in South Africa than they ever were before, and it really is disheartening. You know, when 1994 came around, I told people about South Africa. I said, look, you know, people are going to have patience. What do you mean? Well, you have to understand that there's at least 2 generations of ANC leadership who are not well educated, because their response to fighting apartheid was not go to school and run off to the bush or that sort of thing. So many of them are not well educated. The Thabo Mbeki's who got their, you know, Ivy League education, there's not a lot of them. There's some of those folks, but not a lot. And I said, people are going to have to be patient. It's going to take 2 generations to work through that group of people who don't have the education and train and educate new people coming along and get them into the system. But if South Africa is patient and if they stay on the right path, that in 20 or 30 years, this country could really be moving forward. And it's not. It's just, it's really heartbreaking. That's a shame, because I've never had a bad experience in South Africa, which I think is impressive, given that it can be dangerous in some places at certain times.
Yeah, that's part of my hope as well. You know, I mean, I can't claim this running joke, but yeah, a lot of people do kind of have it in the back of their mind to just say, listen, all that needs to happen is for everyone with Robben Island credentials or struggle veteran credentials to go 6 feet under, and then we can have the fresh start we all want. You know, that again, that might only happen when I'm well into my 40s or 50s, I guess. But yeah. That's kind of my hope, if I have to be honest with myself. But with all of that said, I really do hate the fact that, you know, I've had to give immigration a thought more than a few times. You know, there's always that backup of a backup, and it's not until recently I decided that, hang on a minute, you know, let me not contribute to the brain drain that's happening in this country. You know, I've got friends all over the continent, and a lot of them tell you that their perspective of South Africans is, you know, these guys have the skills that we need in our country, and they're always coming in as consultants on a temporary basis to do some training and the likes. And that just does give hope that, you know, we're still valued, particularly by the rest of the African continent. And if we leave, it's not only South Africa's loss, but Africa at large. So yeah, it's only recently I've kind of, you know, decided that, you know what, stick around and do what needs to be done. My behavior might say something else, of course. You know, I don't trust my retirement savings in a South African bank account anymore, given the ANC and their socialist policies and how they're trying to put in fingers into into the blank check of pension fund money. Yeah, I don't trust them anymore. But yeah, so I might behave differently. But yeah, a part of me says, listen, stay for the long run, because it's not about me. You know, and you're right. Most people, I mean, I have friends from Europe that have been here a few times, and they say the same thing. They haven't experienced anything bad, despite what the world says about our crime rate, etc. It's really not as bad as people make it out to be. We just have a tendency locally of over-reporting everything that's negative, and that does have, in turn, a negative impact on how people see our country in turn.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That's absolutely the case. So Sideliner Opinion says, Koketso is a great ambassador for South Africa. Fine gentleman. Oh, that's a very nice compliment.
Okay. Thank you. I'll wear a hat and tip my hat off. Thanks, Sideliner. Yeah, he's a regular over at Manpatria as well.
Yeah. No, it's good to see Sideliner. You know, I had a huge audience, and then it all kind of went sideways when PooTube censored me. But a lot of those names have been coming back now, so it's good to see some of those people rediscovering that I'm back and I'm here. But you know, it's I'm not. Well, am I surprised? Yeah, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that you considered emigrating. That's really sad. You know, for years, people looked at people leaving South Africa and they said, oh, it's just the Afrikaners. Actually, it wasn't so many Afrikaners, mostly English-speaking South Africans left, but some Afrikaners left too. But over the past 15 years, I've noticed that everybody's leaving South Africa. Whites, coloreds, Indians, blacks. It doesn't people because they either have not had the opportunity or people have been repeated victims of crime or whatever the reasons. But it's a shame because now you have a few million South Africans living abroad who have the skills and the talent that's needed at home. And hopefully the ANC can be boosted out or bumped out of power at some point, and rationality can come back to South Africa, and people focus on building a society. And there's nothing wrong with making money, especially when you make jobs for people and you create new conditions and new devices that people can enjoy their lives with. But you're right about this socialist leanings of the ANC. This expropriation without compensation, I've been telling people all along, it's not about farmland. Yes, it'll be used to take land, but that's not what it's about. From my perspective, expropriation without compensation, because it's about property, will be used to confiscate your retirement savings, and it'll be used primarily as a weapon against any political opponent. Oh, so you want to keep lipping off about our ruling? Well, you know what? Hey, they're going to come take your Mercedes SUV, and we're going to take your house. And what? And so it'll be used as a means to cow the opposition, because you can just take property without any justification legally. And I think that's what this is really about. And I think that's at the end of the day what's really going on here. It might be the farmland and restoring farmland may be the argument that's made, but the real purpose of this is to control the population and steal from them.
Yeah, and when you couple this with some of the tabled legislative changes that we've come across in the past 4 years or so, everything from the proposal to take away guns as a means of self-defense, right down to even, again, more recent, right down to things like, if you emigrate, you can't pull out your retirement savings for, I think, a period of 3 years. All of that is done to actually hinder people from leaving. So not only do they not want you to leave if you've managed to actually work a bit and acquire some semblance of wealth or life savings, not only can't you leave, but now they want to actually come after it. And having property, your own property, isn't even a safe bet anymore because they want to come after that as well. So yeah, it's heartbreaking stuff. And this is why one starts to think now, about what is actually the best way forward. And I know a lot of people will then say that, no, we need to go back to communal living and the like, where communities actually look out for each other. But, not everyone has that option. If I have to be honest, I've a slightly large family on my mother's side, not so much on my father's, but, if I can't take everyone with me, if I decide to really build a strong community, I can't include everyone I would want to include in there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's quite sad to think about, but like I mentioned, and I'm sure you'd agree here as well, that none of this is going away until at the very least we vote out this ruling party.
I was looking at the comments here because a couple questions came up. I'm trying to understand what the question really is. So Gert Janssen van Rensburg says, ask Koketso regarding his favorite ANC mayor that he has professed some strong opinions about. I don't know if favorites are right. Maybe an ANC mayor that he's spoken a lot about. Is there anyone in particular, or is there an inside secret here that I don't know about that Gert's asking about? Or
so one of the reasons I'm looking forward to voting in these upcoming elections is voting out my mayor. So I have a moron of a man who happens to be my mayor. His name is Mzwandile Masina. So to rewind, when he was voted in back in 2016, his first utterances as the new mayor was because the ANC almost lost the election there. It would have turned out to be a coalition government of sorts, just like Johannesburg. But in Ekurhuleni, that didn't happen. The ANC slightly got the majority necessary without a coalition. And his first utterances were, "How dare you people vote for white people?"
What?
So, yeah, you can just imagine, you're the new mayor, you've just come in, you're supposed to go in there and just deliver a very standard speech of, this is what I'm going to do, let's rebuild our cities, let's bring the funk back. That he doesn't do that. Instead, his first utterances was, as the new mayor, is, how dare you guys vote for white people. This is the same guy who, in lieu of COVID-19, he was having tea with the Cuban ambassador to South Africa and posting on his Twitter profile about how This is pre-vaccine now, how Cuba was going to give us the COVID vaccine. This is the same guy who panders to the socialists, and this is the same guy as well. Keep in mind that Ekuleni is quite a large section of land as well, with quite a lot of people. He's done nothing demonstrable. There's nothing I can point to right now, 5 years later, to say that, this is a program of the mayor and it's done good for the community. Absolutely nothing. So not only is he a moron, but even at his job, he's done absolutely nothing. And you would have to work very hard to convince me that he's worked a single day in his life. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to voting him out. And his days are numbered. He's quiet these days after realizing that, he can't necessarily say bad stuff about some of the ANC leadership and the like. So he's very quiet these days. But I think he knows that his writing's on the wall, and he's been sitting on a fat salary for the past 5 years. And the chickens have come home to roost.
It's interesting because in Namibia, the president came out and threatened white Namibians if they didn't vote for SWAPO, there'd be hell to pay. And so, as if he needed the white vote, if he needed. But in the municipal elections they had last year in November, the SWAPO got its hat handed to them because black Namibians are like, what? What? Yeah, many black Namibians took as much offense to that as white Namibians did, and SWAPO lost control of Windhoek. They lost control of Walvis Bay. They lost control of Swakopmund. It's all gone.
Swakopmund, yeah.
Yeah. They don't control Rehoboth. They don't control any of these metropolitans or city areas anymore. All controlled by opposition parties. And SWAPO is in real trouble. I mean, the president's wildly unpopular. He had the lowest percentage of any president, just 57% of the vote in his election last time. So it seems to me that some of these idiots need to be a little more astute and realize that you can't just simply demonize people based on their skin color and think it's going to get everybody to draw to your standard. Now, to draw a certain percentage of people, but it's not going to draw everybody. And I think it's very encouraging to see what happened in Namibia. Again, here's another case of a country that had a free and fair election in the midst of the pandemic. No problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
And of course, what happened to SWAPO is what's going to happen to the ANC, and that's why it's not free and fair in South Africa. It's not free and fair to the ANC.
So hence they have a vested interest in postponing it as much as they can, so they can do a bit of housekeeping themselves, and then of course start the propaganda train in the run up to the new date, the proposed new date, I guess. But of course they're not the only ones who will be given additional time, and I think they forget that in this whole debacle. They're also giving the DA time to campaign, the EFF time to campaign. The IFP post riots to campaign as well. Freedom Front Plus, never rule them out. They're on the up and up, judging by the last election numbers. And they're conservative party as well. So there are quite a lot of conservatives in the country. It's that whole thing about maybe a silent majority, if I can put it like that. The Freedom Front Plus is appealing to them, black and white.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. But to be honest, when it comes to freedom, now I've interviewed Dr. Peter Groenewald and Corné Mulder, had them both on here. But in my view, I don't really know what strength they're going to have. They could, and I just don't see it. But to me, the reason that they did well last time is people who left the DA, who were frustrated with the DA under Musi Maimane, and how the DA was, by all appearances, trying to be the ANC light in that last election. That was very disappointing. I was very disappointed. I predicted that the DA could take over 30% of the national vote last time and be a major force, and they went the opposite direction. They actually lost votes. Very disappointing. But I think one of the reasons why the Freedom Front Plus gained is that they picked up a number of people who are angry at the DA. Now, whether that'll stay the case or not doesn't matter. But again, here's the thing that a lot of people really don't get, and it frustrates me, is that, first off, in any municipal election, we're talking 31 and 38% of eligible voters actually go out and cast a vote. So not a large number of people actually turn up for these elections. So the smaller number of voters there are, the fewer votes you need to win and take control of Metropolitan. And that's the thing. And that's the thing people have to realize, is that every vote counts. So if you are at least at all interested in seeing the ANC pushed aside, you need to go out and vote. You got to go out and vote. The more people go out and vote, the greater chance that opposition parties can win. And, there's a lot of talk last year about coalition governments, but when it comes to the municipal level, I'm not a big fan of coalition governments. I'm okay with a coalition as long as you have a majority and then you're not dependent on your coalition partner. So let's say that, for instance, in in Nelson Mandela Bay, that the DA gets 52% of the vote. All right. And then the Freedom Front Plus gets about 4%. And then the African Christian Democratic Party, somebody gets 2%. Well, if the DA wants to bring those folks in as part of a coalition to show they can work together with other parties and give them a little more cushion for votes, then that's great. But if you've got to be beholden to other parties, then you find yourself in a situation that DA found themselves in Nelson Mandela Bay previously, in which they were beholden to a corrupt partner who wanted to do things that were inappropriate, and then the coalition is constantly under threat and it could fall apart. So I don't think that coalitions to the local level is the right answer. Maybe a national coalition, that's a whole other story though. But my argument all along has been is that if the ANC is pushed out of all the metros in 2021, that will change the landscape demonstrably for the next national election, and the ANC could see itself on the outs.
Yeah, on your last point there, I have to agree, but there's a big red flag there in that even if you ask the ANC out of a metropolitan area or any one of our large cities, whoever comes in inherits a bevy of problems that they can't fix within that specific election cycle or within those 5 years. And we saw this with him and Mashaba. Pity didn't even finish his term as Joburg mayor, of course. He resigned from the DA, etc. But whoever comes in post-ANC has such a big mess to clean up that it's going to take, they need to climb several large mountains one after the other if there's going to be any effective change for the smallest guy, the little guy further down the barrel, of course. And the ANC can also then use that as a way to actually come back in, and we saw what happened with Tshwane, where they're still trying to, they're very quick to highlight the DA's failures in that municipality, whereas the DA is still trying to clean up the mess that they found, particularly with the water crisis in Hammanskraal. I don't know if you know about it, but, the water in that area, it's basically poison. This is not drinkable water. It's basically poison. There's all sorts of health issues out of there, but people don't even drink it sometimes because you turn the tap and you can kind of see that this thing looks more like acid than something I should ingest. So, the DA never won in fixing that because, again, it's going to take a mammoth effort if they're going to get it right, of course. But the ANC then uses that to try come back in and say, right, you see, you've been having dirty water with these DA guys here. They promised to fix it. They still haven't fixed it. So put us back in power and we'll fix it. And they're saying this to a populace that conveniently forgets that the problem existed even before the DA was there. So, it goes back to that saying. I think it was Ken Peters who came up with it. And I've tried to look online who came up with this original saying. But, there's a saying that says you should never blame the Prince of Fools. You shouldn't focus so much on the Prince of Fools while forgetting about the confederacy of fools that made him their prince. And it's a very harsh thing to say, but it actually comes right down to that, that at the end of the day, those failing politicians didn't place themselves there. They were actually springboarded to wherever they are by a population that was lied to, fed propaganda, fed racism, hate, race hate, and all of that. So, it's a very long game, but unfortunately, one coalition won't be enough. We'd probably need about 20 years or so of coalition after coalition to see any effective change, and I don't know if we're going to see that anyway. Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. I was reading the chat over here while you were sharing that, and Beth says, wow, Chris really turned on the switch today. People were really enjoying your presence on the program, Koketso. Thanks a lot. It's really awesome here. There's some very generous comments here. I don't take that as anything I've turned on a switch. I'm very much under the weather, and I'm doing my best just to keep in the conversation here today. So it's clearly your effort that's making this thing come off. So thanks for that. But the one thing when it comes back to it is the municipalities is that even if opposition parties do control municipalities, a lot of people in South Africa don't realize that the municipalities get much of their funding from the national government and the way there's a lot of national competencies like police and stuff like that. So even if you run a mayoralship and a town council, you have events and things, resources beyond your control. And the party in power at the national level can still frustrate you. I think the Mother City Cape Town water crisis is one of the examples of how there's a real need for national, provincial, and local officials to work together. And if they don't,
you're not going to solve problems. The water crisis in Cape Town is not because of climate change, despite all the greenies running around going, oh, it's climate change, it's climate change. No, the average waterfall was actually very little changed from what the historical norms have been during the water crisis in Cape Town. The issue is the piss poor water management. No brown water reuse, so they don't take the storm water and use it to water lawns and stuff like that. It just gets washed away. It gets treated. And then, of course, about 45% of all water never makes it to end users because of leaky pipes all over and mismanagement of the reservoirs, and the list goes on and on and on. But in order to fix all that, that's been broken since the National Party. The National Party didn't address that adequately. Then the ANC had control of Cape Town for a little bit. They didn't address it adequately. The DA's got it. No one has addressed it adequately. But in order to solve it, you've got to solve it at the national, the provincial, and the local level. And I think that's going to be one of the things that opposition parties, if and when they take control of metros, need to make clear to their constituents. This is what we have the ability to fix. This is what we're going to focus on. These things we have no control over, and you have to work with us to try to push other authorities to make it happen. I think that's an important consideration, which a lot of people don't fully understand.
Yeah, and maybe to use your water example here, my personal view is that, if we have to really be objective about all of this, Cape Town is in a prime position to make use of technologies such as desalination, etc. But the reality is a lot of that intellectual property and intellectual capital actually sits in Israel. And at a national level, we know about the anti-Israeli rhetoric, of course. So that invitation from our national government to the Israeli government, it will never come, unless there's a regime change, of course. So it's little things like that. And even if you don't want to approach Israel, you'd still then have to approach someone else to come and actually help you with this because they're experienced in it. And we can't even do that because, again, we've got this BEE elephant in the room where the only help that must come in under the umbrella of, must come in with the intention to have a black majority partner of some sort before it can get the rubber stamp. So these are just some of the deterrents. BEE is really a deterrent, and so too is our foreign policy when it comes to solving some of our most basic problem, like delivering water to people. And I could go on and on because these examples just exist in isolation throughout the country and everything. But I suppose the reason the DA still largely gets my vote on either the local or the national ballot is because they believe in federalism, and I'm all for federalism. I want to actually empower my local representative as much as I can so they can do something about it. Or if I use myself as an example, I'm more than happy to empower my local councillor, Mrs. Heather Hart. But there's only so much she can do because above her sits the idiot mayor we mentioned earlier. So,
sorry, I love it. The idiot mayor. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So federalism, I believe, it definitely is a way to go. It would make government representatives at a local level a lot more accountable as well, while at the same time empowering them to actually do the things that their constituents want to be done. And that's why the DA gets my vote in that respect, and that they're really pushing for that. And I'll always give a thumbs up to that. And we kind of envy how the way the states are set up in that respect as well.
Well, listen, Koketso, you've been very generous with your time, and I've really enjoyed this. But I have a habit, if I'm not careful, we'll be talking 4 hours from now, and I don't want to eat up your entire evening. So I mean, I've had 5.5 hour live streams in the past. They're not going to do that to you, but I want to thank you for your time. And Bob Z307 says it's been great and very insightful conversation. Thank you, Chris and Koketso. And then Bosch Seber just gave a super chat. Says, Colonel, you and your guests are on the ball with this stream. Keep it up. Well, we're going to end it here because we've both got things to do. But Koketso, you are welcome back on the program anytime, and I'd love to have you back. It'd be awesome. A lot of wonderful comments here. People really enjoyed hearing from you today and your thoughts. And I've enjoyed the conversation. And my apologies to you because I'm not 100%. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation with me. I've had to put a lot of energy in just to stay focused here for this program. But thank you so much.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'd love to be back. Literally, just say when. And
all right, so tomorrow, Koketso will be back on the program. Just kidding.
Well, I love hearing that people don't assume I'm just a guy who's rambling on about nonsense here. I really do appreciate that, and I hope that maybe people learn a thing or two. But maybe my big takeaway here is, and I do this a lot whenever I'm inside an airport lounge, where I always look for like preferably an older white male, and I just start a random conversation, and we can chat about anything and everything. We don't even have to swap names or contact details. But the reason I do this is because he walks away from that knowing that, okay, he had a chat with a young black guy and that guy was all right, and it kind of helps his perspective going forward, and instead of him now having to deal with being inundated about how young black guys are just people who ramble on about land and so yeah, I do it more for him than I do for myself. And I've done it a few times. And me coming on these platforms is really a way of doing it to a larger audience, I guess. So yeah, I really do enjoy these kind of chats. And thanks you for the invite, really.
It's my absolute pleasure. Beth Frazier said I could listen to Koketso's accent all day. Well, Beth, then you need to go listen to Man Patriot, because between him and his co-host, dead sexy voices, you'll really enjoy that. But Digital X says, where can we follow him? Well, go to Man Patriot on YouTube. Do you do anything else on social media, or is that the focus, Man Patriot?
It's Manpatria. It's also, I guess, my Twitter profile. That's where you'll see me ramble almost on a daily basis. And I just got into writing, so give me a couple of months, and I'll be able to point you to where you can read more of what I write, if I can put it that way.
Well, the Manpatria link is below this video, folks. If you want to check on it as soon as we're finished, click on it, go there and become a subscriber. They have what I think is a unjustly low total of subscribers. I think a channel like that ought to have 30 or 40,000 subscribers easily. Of course, I think my channel ought to have 100,000, but so maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But feel free to go over and subscribe to their channel. And I guarantee you that you will not be disappointed in what those guys put on. It's really amazing. It's fantastic. While we've been talking, someone mentioned here there were more explosions in Kabul after 2 already this morning, which a Marine was injured. So I guess it's time to go pay attention to that. But Koketso, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure. And we'll get you back on the channel sometime soon.
Awesome.
All right, I'll let him drop off, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up for today, folks. I hope everybody's well. It is Thursday. Where am I at over here? Yeah. Whoops. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. What's going on here? It's not letting me put it. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, folks, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a little distracted. I'm having a hard time here keeping my focus today. I hope that wasn't distracting for you. Still feeling a bit under the weather here. But anyway, thanks a lot. That was a fantastic guest, and I really enjoyed it. Why is it they can't speak Afrikaans? I have no idea. Probably didn't grow up with it around where he was at. That's probably why. But anyway, folks, thanks a lot. Be sure to smash the like button on your way out the door. And it's a pleasure to have you all join us today. Thanks for the super chats, the few that came in there, and for the likes, and also for the very good questions. Obviously, I couldn't get to all your questions. I did the best I could to bring some of them in there. But thanks a lot, everybody. We'll catch you here next time on Chris Wyatt Africa. God bless and have a lovely, lovely day. All right? Cheers. So I'm discombobulated. Here we go.